Okay, as in go? Sorry, 1 second.
Forktales, a podcast that feeds the food and beverage world.
Oh, awesome. Forktales is brought to you by Vigor, a branding and marketing agency for passion-driven, innovative restaurant, beverage, and hospitality brands. Learn more at vigorbranding.com. If you love what we're serving up, please give Forktales a 5-star review on your podcast service of choice. Think of it as a tip for good service.
Hey everyone, today I'm joined by my friend Jonathan Weathington. He's the CEO of Shuckin Shack. If you don't know what Shuckin Shack is, you're about to find out. But before we hop into that, Jonathan, say hello and give everyone a little bit of a backstory.
Sure, Joseph, thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much. I also appreciate that you go by your full name as well. So everyone likes to cut it short, but no, my mom wouldn't be too pleased with that. So I also go by my full name. Nonetheless, thanks for having me on. Backstory for us, we're my 30-second, even 5-second elevator pitch, so to speak, is if you like cold beer and you like raw oysters, you're going to like us just fine. So that's our quick story of what our brand is. Certainly, we've built it into more than that over the last 15 years. We opened our first location in 2007. So November of 2007, so almost 15 years running at this point. Started franchising in 2014, so almost 8 years deep in the franchising program. Actually, 8 years deep this week in the franchising program. So pretty cool there. But basically, backstory is we found a niche. Our first location was in Carolina Beach, North Carolina. If you've probably never been there, and that's
I've been there, vacation there once or twice.
Okay. Yeah, so cool little sleepy beach town, and certainly in 2007 it was a lot different than it is now, rather. And the founders, I'm not a founder of the brand, Matt Picken and Sean Cook founded the brand, and there was no oyster bar there, and several other kind of calabash style seafood. And what I mean by that is fried seafood piled really high. You taste the grease before you taste the shrimp, and so. What we wanted to bring was a little more steamed style. So steamed style, East Coast. Think about my favorite story of what I associate Shuckin Shack with is my family didn't do a lot of beach vacationing. But when we did, it was the whole family. And my mom had 7 brothers and sisters. So like the whole family. So there was quite literally 50 cousins that would show up to this one beach house meant for, 12 or 15 people. Shuckin Shack is that experience. It's an authentic coastal experience where, I'm under the house. My Uncle Larry's drinking a Budweiser and he's just poured seafood out on newspaper that's on a picnic table, and everybody's kind of walking around. I'm a chubby little kid. I got my shirt off. We're just kind of picking at the table and eating things, and it's a very familiar experience. That's what Shuckin Shack is all about. We're built on authenticity. We're built on great seafood, obviously, but we're far more about the experience, and we want to take you to that experience when you walk into our restaurants. So that's who we are. That's a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like those memories, I still crave it. So I was born in central Pennsylvania, just north of Chesapeake. So our seafood was crab feasts. Same thing. You throw down the newspaper, you dump the bushel of crabs the whole way down the line, and when I got of age, of course, the beer was involved, but before that, it was soda. I'm a soda person. I don't call it pop. So we would drink the soda and I'd clean the crabs. And I learned how to clean crabs like fully from leg to the body part. I think when I was like 10, I was doing it myself, just with a butter knife, just getting after it. And there's something really communal about that and wonderful. And I love that Shuckin Shack is reclaiming it in its own way. So you started at Shuckin Shack over 8 years ago, and obviously you're now CEO. So that's an awesome journey. Tell me more about that journey. What was it like? What was the secret to progressing through the ranks?
Yeah, it's been to quote a famous quote, it's kind of been a strange journey for me. I was around when Shuckin Shack started in 2007. One of the founders of Shuckin Shack, Sean, he had another business 2 doors down, and he actually, I responded, believe it or not, the reason I am with Shuckin Shack is because of Craigslist. As odd as that sounds,
I love it.
I mean, it's absolutely bizarre how all of these things culminated into. I can see my life, my career journey going back to quite literally responding to a Craigslist ad for a kayak guide. That's how it started for me. And so Sean ran a rental business, still runs it, and they did kayak tours and all of those things. And I'd spent a lot of time in the water, very comfortable in the water, done a lot of kayaking, a lot of paddling on the southern coast of North Carolina, done, previously some whitewater guiding and things like that, or at least participating. And so I thought, hey, I'm living at the beach during the summer. I just broken my lease on my apartment. I'll live out of my Jeep. That's literally what I did. I had a pallet in my Jeep and a 3-bin plastic drawer set in the back of my Jeep. That's where I kept all of my possessions. Wow. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna kayak. I'm gonna be a kayak guide for the summer. So I responded to a Craigslist ad, and Sean emailed me right back. We were on the phone 5 minutes later. We met the next morning. I took him on a tour, which was essentially the interview process. And then a couple days later, he called me back and said, man, I don't really know you from Adam, but you seem like a trustworthy guy. And do you want to run my shop for me this summer? He said, I got a lot going on. I'm building a restaurant. And I said, yeah, sure, man. Of course, I'll run your shop for you this summer. And so the rest is history. There's a circuitous route to it, but I was, at the time, I had just finished undergrad. I was taking a year off and getting ready to go to grad school. And so I worked for Sean another 3 summers down there, paying for grad school. And then as I progressed and I saw Shuckin Shack open and in November of 2007. And then that first summer they were open, which would have been summer of 2008, there was just something about it. Even myself as working 2 doors down, you'd walk in and you just feel welcome. Now, the shop we worked at didn't have air conditioning, so I tried to walk in as much as possible. And so I would walk in and the bartenders would always say, hey, and they knew my name after just a couple of visits, and they'd give me water and I'd use the restroom, and, I'd order lunch from there. And I liked hanging out. And immediately it became one of those spots that's familiar. It's just familiar, regardless of how many times you go in. It could be your first visit and it feels familiar to you. There's something very genuine about it. And I think part of that, from a founder's perspective, knowing the founders really well, was that they didn't know any better. And that's a good thing sometimes. They didn't try to overcomplicate things. They didn't give spiels to the bartenders that you had to say while you came in. They didn't give upselling technique to bartenders or servers or whomever. They just wanted people to hang out. And so first they developed the bar crowd, and then people started realizing, hey, this place has really good food. So it kind of started as a dive bar and that served excellent food. And I started noticing it grow and grow and grow. And by the 3rd summer I was working down there, I mean, there was just lines out the door all the time. And so I finished grad school. I went off into a big boy job wearing a suit and tie every day and spent 6 months there, realized I hated it, and wanted to get back into the customer service side of things. So myself and Sean opened another business, another bar that we ran for 2 years. And then they were talking about franchising. By this time they had opened the 2nd location, which I helped them build, and started talking about a 3rd location in 2013-ish. And then called me in February of 2014 and said, hey, we're thinking about franchising. We don't know where you fit, but we think you fit. Would you consider it? And in the position that I was in my other employer, I was really good at my job, but I was replaceable. And I wanted to go into business. I've always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. I'd started several businesses on my own. And I wanted to go somewhere where I was valued. I could help build a brand. I could bring some of my, limited expertise into it. And so that's what I did. I joined the team officially in July of 2014. And I am not kidding one bit when I say I slept on Matt's couch, who's the other co-founder. I slept on his couch for almost a year because, when you're starting any business, you just don't know if it's going to work.
That's right.
And we knew that we had a great concept. It was just about how can we repeat this, which is the essence of franchising, right? You've got a great concept, but how can you make it repeatable? So we spent that whole year. I slept on his couch. We got a few units opened, and it took off. and it's been very successful. And so I was promoted to CEO in November of 14.
Hmm.
And the rest is pretty much history.
I love that. Let's talk about the concept a little bit. So, um, oysters are the mainstay, they're the flagship product. But that is a very niche product, and it can be quite divisive. Like, you either love it or you hate it. And admittedly, I did not like oysters up until about 3 years ago.
Mhm.
I couldn't get over the consistency, but most of it was just me being, you know, hesitant for no reason whatsoever, because visually they don't look great. Um, how has Shuckin Shack tackled the challenge of finding enough folks to buy into the oyster niche?
Sure. So oysters are a big part of our business, obviously. I think though, from a 10,000-foot view, and just looking at not just us being an oyster place inside the four walls, but we're essentially selling and promoting an entire experience. So oysters are a big thing. Shrimp is a huge thing.
Mhm.
We serve wild caught American shrimp. It comes from Gulf waters, and it just tastes better. And so what we're doing is we're sourcing products that go into our restaurant that are really high integrity, that taste better, come straight out of the water, into the steamer, onto the plate. And so to answer your question, it is a little bit of a niche, but we serve a little bit more than oysters. That being said, we've kind of been at this right place, right time moment. Oysters have become extremely popular culinarily, especially in the past 5 years.
Mhm.
You see a lot of national publications, a lot of places are adding oysters to their menu or doing them on limited time offerings or things like that. And so for us, we view seafood as the way of the future. It's an incredibly underutilized portion of the plate. If you're thinking about, how many meals you eat in a year, how much of that is seafood? It's healthier. It
Mhm.
contains a lot of the essential nutrients for life, and so we think that we're well positioned from a menu standpoint to appeal to a lot of people. We didn't open Shuck and Shack to be trendy. It was never that. It just happens to be we're in a trendy subset of the restaurant industry right now. And so there's a lot of things at play when we're talking about recruiting franchise partners into our system, and even on the business to consumer side, which is you're in a growing industry. The seafood is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the most important differentiating factor in that is that a majority of the seafood that is consumed in the US is consumed in restaurants.
Mhm.
People don't typically cook seafood at home. And if they do, it's a special occasion. So it's unlike burgers or steaks or tacos or things like that, where, man, I'll go home tonight and throw a burger on the grill 20 minutes after pulling in the driveway. You can do that with seafood, but most people don't.
Right.
And so we know that we have capitalized on that market and being a trustworthy source of those products. And then on top of that, you add the bar, and it's a win-win for us. We're a full service bar, cold beer, cocktails, and that all of that culminates into an entire authentic coastal experience where, I mean, you feel like you're on the Carolina coast, or the Outer Banks of Virginia coast, or on the Gulf Coast. That's what we're selling. It's more than just oysters.
Yeah, I love that. Um, One thing that usually throws red flags up for me, or not red flags, but yellow flags, something to be leery of, is the supply chain issues that go along with it. So oysters can be very regional. There's different flavors if you get, for instance, Connecticut or Massachusetts oysters versus Virginia versus even further south. How do you, one, how have you been able to secure top notch oysters? Because a bad oyster is really bad,
Really
from
bad.
unit
Yeah.
to unit. And what are some of those challenges, and how have you all overcome it?
Sure. So I think on the supply chain side, we've been very fortunate in that we have a really wide range of oysters that we sell. We have a fairly wide range of sourcing. Virginia, for instance, is the largest oyster producer in the East Coast United States. We can get oysters to our entire footprint out of Virginia without any interruption whatsoever. Virginia produces oysters 365 days a year. And because they're aquaculture oysters, which is where the industry has moved, there's time temperature control. They're
Mhm.
put into refrigeration immediately upon harvest. They're graded. Those that don't pass the grade as far as sizing is concerned are returned to the water, so they become healthier oysters over time. And so we have worked. The supply chain is more difficult on seafood. It's simply put, but because we've been in the industry longer, And because we're providing that to our franchise partners coming on, it's a lot more advantageous position for us. We're experts in the industry. We have become de facto seafood supply chain experts. And so on the oyster side, we can consistently get product across our entire footprint because we do have trusted suppliers in Virginia, in the Gulf, in the Northeast. And then we work with several very, very large broadline support suppliers on the seafood side. So, the critical component of oysters is temperature. That's the big thing. Once they come out of the water, they need to be temperature controlled. And so we have all verified suppliers. Every oyster source that we have is tagged and official. And so it's a trustworthy source that can be sourced 365 days a year. And it's put on a truck and delivered to our restaurants within a couple of days of harvest, because it has to be. An oyster shelf life is technically about 2 weeks, but we try to serve them within the first week of harvest because that's when they're best. And we don't let them sit around. Our par levels are lower in the restaurants. And so we keep fresh product on hand, but we also blow through it pretty quickly.
Yeah. One of the issues when you get into franchising, though, is corralling those franchisees. As much as we love them, they can be difficult, especially because they have invested their own money. They're entrepreneurs as a result. And so when they see slippage, or if they see an opportunity to do something cheaper, they love to dive at that. And I think when it comes to specifically this P mix, that can be quite dangerous. How are you with, I hate to use the word, but policing those franchisees,
Yeah.
making sure that they've bought in, making sure that they are adhering to standard, and making sure that they are, not getting people sick, which is easily done when seafood turns.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's three components to it. I think the first component is the integrity of the product. Number one, we're serving, like I said before, wild caught American product. Most, 90+% of what we serve is sourced domestically. And so it's coming out of waters that are trusted and more regulated. We're not pulling product from Asia, which is another huge seafood source where there's less regulation. There's a little bit less trust on the product coming over. Yes, there is some regulatory compliance, but it's nothing like what's happening here in the U.S. as far as pulling product is concerned. It's very similar to the beef market in that concern. In that, if you're sourcing beef, a certain cut of beef, you're sourcing from different parts of the country, it's very regulated. There's a lot of hoops that the suppliers and the harvesters, for instance, oystermen and fishers have to jump through. There's a lot of regulations that they have to go through. We also are verifying that on the back end to verify the integrity of the product. We work with a supply chain management company. And so whenever we pursue new product, or we go for, let's say, once a year we buy shrimp, we do case commitments on shrimp. So when we go for that, we know the exact spec of the product that we're looking for. We do case commitments of, several thousand cases. And then we're passing that savings along to our franchisees. And quite frankly, going back to the integrity of the product, if you taste the wild caught American shrimp versus something sourced from a farmed shrimp in Asia, there's a humongous taste difference.
Absolutely.
And so our customer base 100% depends upon that integrity of the product. The second part is training. The training of our franchisees, and we actually will take them through that. This is why we source products from here and not here. This is how you can source products from here and not here. As far as oysters are concerned, it's a little bit wider net. So we allow our franchisees some leeway in that because people, in Texas and Florida, they want Gulf oysters. Yes, they'll eat Virginia oysters, and that's still a big part of what we're doing. However, in those states and along the Gulf, they want the much larger, kind of clustered oysters. And so we'll serve that seasonally. So we allow our franchisees some lanes of operation. And that's really, really important that we do that, because to your point, it's less of a policing atmosphere within our brand. We want you to operate within these lanes of operation. We're giving you choices in how you can operate within those lanes. We're not telling you have to order and source this oyster and this oyster only. We're saying, hey, if as long as those oysters are tagged and from a verified, safe source, then serve it. And if your customers are coming to you and saying, hey, I really want blue points, or I really want Duxbury's, or I really want this or that, then find it. And we can help you find those sources on all of those things. And so we give our franchisees some of that leeway. And then the last thing is pricing. So integrity, training, and then pricing on it. We're doing a lot of buying ahead of time. So when we're talking about shrimp, we're talking about crab legs, we're talking about crab. We're doing a lot of those. We're doing a lot of those buys on the franchisor side ahead of time, and our franchisees are ultimately the ones that benefit from that because we have consistent pricing throughout the year on most of those center of the plate items.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and so like you said earlier, and just here a second ago, it's more than oysters. Obviously, there's a full P mix here that
Sure.
is seafood centered, but that doesn't travel very well. So a lot of this industry, one of the things that we've been seeing with concept to concept is this huge shift towards delivery. It was fueled by the pandemic, but I think it was always going to come down the pike anyway, just as consumer behaviors shift. How do you ensure that the Shuckin Shack product maintains um, its fortitude and its deliciousness
Of
in a
course.
delivery scenario? Because obviously seafood can be very fickle, like French fries. I mean, even French fries are quite fickle when they get delivered.
That's right.
It's French fries you kind of have to eat immediately, or else they just get
Right.
soggy, limp, and
It
weird.
gets soggy. That's right.
Yeah. So how
I,
have you
I think
tackled
on
that?
our end, we, it's a very unpopular choice that we've made, which is we aren't doing a lot of delivery
Mm,
because we don't have to. Our customer base, we have doubled down on the customer experience, and we have doubled down on being the trusted source of seafood. We believe that our customers will pull up to our restaurants if they want our food, and they have consistently proven that they will do that. I think a part of that is there's not a natural association that Shuckin Shack is all about convenience because it's not. We're not going to compete with pizza. We're not going to compete with Chinese food delivery. We're not going to compete
yeah.
with those things. You look at, all praise to Domino's. They're a technology company in pizza clothing, right?
Yep.
They have mastered how to get you a hot pizza very, very quickly. The same thing with Chinese delivery. It's always been quick. It's been quick since I was in college. Nothing has changed there. You order, Mandarin chicken and it's at your house in 35 minutes and it tastes
Hmm.
the exact same because they've got all those things figured out and because their product is based in things that travel a little bit better. We know on the seafood side, seafood typically you want to eat it right when it comes off the grill or right when it comes out of the steamer or right when it hits that food window. And so what we've tried to educate our customer base on that, number one, and saying, hey, this is why we don't do some of delivery. Because if you get mad at our product, you're rarely going to get mad at one of the delivery options. You're going to get mad at us and say our
That's right.
food wasn't any good. What we're telling you is our food's really good. You just got to come pick it up. And
Yep.
so in COVID, that was a little bit against the grain. It really was. We were one of the few places, at least national brands, that we just did not advertise delivery. Certainly, we allowed and we encouraged individual franchisees if they wanted to pursue that route, we would help them, and we did help them in doing so. But most of our marketing was focused around to go curbside, come get your chance to escape from the house. Back when we were on mega lockdown in different states, one of the approved reasons you could leave was to get food. And
Hmm.
so that was something that we doubled down on the marketing side. And then furthermore, we kept in touch with our customers and saying, when you choose to come back out and dine, these are the things that we're doing within our restaurants so you can dine with us safely. And so we really, really, it was a hard decision. And it was I'm not going to say it was unpopular in our system. It was not. Our franchisees were in lockstep with us on that and
That's
saying,
great.
hey, we know exactly what you're saying. You're absolutely right. Seafood doesn't travel all that well. A few menu items do, but for the most part, it doesn't travel all that well. So we're going to dump dollars on the marketing side and saying, meet us at the curb. We'll meet you there. Come get it to go. It's going to taste better. So that's what we did. And that's what's worked for us.
I love it. So, I think when you get to beach town concepts, they can almost be elusive in their actual success. So, what I mean by that
Mhm.
is, boom, I open up a seaside shack, I'm banging it out, I'm making numbers, but now I want to grow. And all of a sudden, we start getting inland. That seafood shack feel just doesn't seem to play all the time. It seems to start to get diluted down. Um, how have you managed that growth? Because you've gone inland, you've also gone down the coast a
Yeah.
bit too. What does that look like? I mean, do you see good traction inland versus coastal, or is coastal still the best format and location for you?
I thought the same thing when we first started growing. I thought, hey, we're looking at the coast. It's a natural fit. You don't have to create the cool vibe in a seafood shack on the coast. People are going to naturally associate coming to the beach or, spending a few days close to the water with seafood. That's fish in a barrel for us, so to speak, pun intended. But we've actually seen there's an equal success rate from our inland locations as there is our coastal locations. And what we used to talk about a lot, we haven't talked about it recently as much, but we want to eliminate that pilgrimage to the coast for people. And that's exactly what we're doing. 2 of our top 5 locations are more than 2 hours from the coast. And so we are, they're successful because they're recreating that coastal atmosphere. But they're not at the beach. We're talking about folks who might come to the beach once or twice a year. Maybe they have a second home at the beach and they come in the shoulder season, but we are transplanting that coastal experience inland. And we've been very, very fortunate with it, and we've been very good at it. And people visit our restaurants because they say, no, let's not ride an hour and a half for seafood and spend the night. Let's just go to Shuckin Shack. That's what we've been successful at doing. And so, I think our future is inland. Number one, on a business strategy standpoint, there's less competition. Nobody's doing what we're doing inland. There's plenty of great, right here in Wilmington, for instance, there are tons of great seafood restaurants. Top-notch seafood restaurants. You go 5 hours inland, that's not always the case. And so it's less competition for us. It's more advantageous to transplant our product and the integrity of our product inside the country.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the other things that I really noticed and what made me want to reach out to is your dedication to retaining staff and how you treat the staff. And that's one of the other, deliveries one thing, and then the staff issues are storied at this point, and we're still struggling. What have been some of your secrets to empowering the team to grow, thrive, stay with the brand, and then how do you indoctrinate that within the franchisee system so they can do the same?
I think it all boils down to a couple of different factors on our side. Number one, and I said this from the beginning, whenever the Great Resignation happened and everyone was talking about $15 minimum wage and raising pay, it is not just about pay. You have to treat people well, and you have to treat people exceptionally well. And that has to extend beyond the people walking through your doors as customers. That has to extend to your staff. And a big part of that is, are you talking to your staff? Or is it a to B directed conversation where you're the captain and they're the private and you're telling them what to do? Or are you actually having conversations with them like they're real people? Because, last I checked, they were. We haven't replaced our restaurants with robotics. We don't have any intention of doing so. We believe that people make the best additives to all 4 walls in the restaurant space. So are you actually talking to people? And that was our biggest step when we're talking about the Great Resignation and a lot of the hiring challenges and staffing challenges, is talk to them. What do they need? Let's talk about needs. Let's talk about monetary needs. Let's talk about non-monetary needs. Are you considering leaving the restaurant industry because you don't get paid time off? Because that doesn't happen unless you're on the management level. Okay, then let's change it. And so that's one of the things that we took a really, really hard look at from 2020 to 2021 was, what are some of the soft skill and qualitative things that we can do to improve our staffing retention? And we did that. We cut down on our turnover by 38%.
And that's amazing.
Where everyone else was headed in the opposite direction, we haven't stabilized system wide. That would be an overstatement. We're still challenged in several markets, but what we are training and teaching our franchise owners is, you need to be having these conversations. Of course, you've got to raise pay, and you're going to raise pay, and you have raised pay. Our pay is up system wide significantly. However, it's everything outside of that you also need to be talking about. And it's that simple. And we've had a lot of success with that.
Yeah, I think it also is the atmosphere that you've created there, outside of everything you just mentioned. But some places just suck to work at. Like,
that's the truth. And I've worked in some of those places that suck to work at. Like, you wake up in the morning, or even if you have a late shift, and you just put it off and put it off and put it off, and you think, I do not want to go to work today because I don't want to do, I feel like I'm working my tail off, I don't want to do everything they're telling me to do because I think it's stupid and it can be done way more efficiently. Or I don't want to become this person. I don't want to put on this facade that it's not really me. That has been one of the things that we've done from the beginning, in that we're kind of throwing out this idea that you have to homogenize everyone into this same, sentient being in saying, hey, Joseph, your you told me in your interview that your strengths were X, Y, and Z. We're going to throw all of that out, and we want you to be exactly this when you walk into these doors. For me, I won't use a 4-letter word, but no, screw that. We're not doing that. We're taking exactly what you said as your strengths, and we're going to maximize on your strengths because we want you to be you. If you and I were bartenders or servers, we are very, very end goal focused. So the end goal is to treat your guest exceptionally well. You might be a great joke teller. I might not be. That doesn't mean that we can't have that same end goal. And so we're asking our servers, our bartenders, our kitchen staff, everyone that has contact with the customer base in their restaurant, be yourself. Mm-hmm. Be yourself. Now, we want you to show up and be in a good mood and all of those things. And sometimes you have to put whatever's going on in your personal life behind you so that you can make money. That's why you work, so that you can pay for the things that you need to buy. However, we want you to be yourself. And if you're having a bad day, tell us and we'll figure it out. But we're not asking you to do a certain spiel. We're not asking you to say, welcome to Shuckin Shack to everyone that walks through the door. No one gives a rip. Right. They know where they are. They don't need to be reminded of the name of the business that they're coming into. They know exactly where they walked into. And so tell them to sit down, tell them to have a good time, tell a joke, be charming, be personable, just be a human being. And that's what we're asking people to do.
Yeah, I love that. I think, when we get out of the full service restaurant side of things, we start looking at QSRs. It's almost heartbreaking to see what happens there. And what I mean by that is you get someone in the door, and then talk about homogenization. You throw them in the same uniform, you put the hat on and the apron, and now you will do the things. And the stuff doesn't even look cool. And I know that sounds so trivial, but it's not. I mean, they say that you dress for the job that you want. Okay, well, I'm sure that people realize they're starting out, but they don't want to be there in 5 years or 10 years. But you're putting them in these outfits that they would never wear on their own. And you're saying that it's a branded thing. I think brands would do well to actually ask the question, like, is this cool? Like, is this something that people would want to wear? And if the answer is no, then why would they even want to work there besides the paycheck? And I've seen so many brands like that. Chick-fil-A, let's take, for instance, they're very buttoned up, but people buy into that when they work there. They know why they're there. They are in the service industry and they are there to serve, and that's great. But, you talk about, I'm trying to think of an example without ruffling too many feathers, but, you look at like the thing down the street. It's like t-shirt logo on the front. Logo's janky. It looks weird. It's not even something representative of my personality. And then you put me in a stupid hat that I would never wear either. And you expect people to be happy to work there. So I think it would make a lot of sense just to ask people like, hey, are you on the trucker hats? Because I think they look cool, right? And they may say, no, that's old dude. Don't do that.
That's
like,
right.
Listen to those people.
I mean, you're speaking my language, man. I don't necessarily have, my first thought in brand building and bringing in people into your brand, which, make no mistake about it, you may have a great brand from a culinary standpoint. You may have great products and great ideas and have the best, all the technology pieces on earth and give people access to those things. But if you don't have great people in your four walls, none of it matters, not one bit. You will close and you will fail.
Yep.
And we just believe so strongly in that. And we ask ourselves internal questions like, would I want to wear a polo shirt with my name on it and a hat that doesn't fit my head for the next 8 hours? Oh, and by the way, let's do that 5 days a week for the next 52 weeks. No, I don't want to. So I'm not going to make my employees do it. It's not, it is so bewildering to me when, going back to the interview process, like, what is the point? If you want a robot, just have a check mark that says, are you willing to be a robot? And if you check yes, hey, welcome. Here's your pay.
Or at this point, just get a robot. because they're
Or
out there.
just get, at this point, which some brands have moved into and been successful with, just get a robot. But we are not looking for that. We believe that people bring color to photographs, right? That's what we're after. And it is experiential. We are not in the business, and many QSRs have been exceptionally successful, profitable, have done amazing numbers, and will continue to do those things. But the reason you visit a QSR is because it's in their name. It's quick service. They're after quick service. It's a transactional relationship. For us, it's very different. We are full service, and full meaning we're going to come to your table. We're going to take your order. We're going to offer you a bar atmosphere. You're going to leave feeling like you got fully serviced. And so for us, we've taken that to heart. We just don't have. It's not in our brand DNA to turn people into robots, and that's just not our way forward.
That's awesome. So what's next for Shuckin Shack? What's on the horizon, or at least what can you share?
Sure. So we're going to open a few more restaurants this year. We just want to open healthy units. You see a lot of brands out there, and rightfully so. They advertise. We've sold 1 million, or we've sold 300 units. We've got franchise agreements in 46 states. And well, how many do you actually get open? Because that's what counts.
That's right.
What you have in your pipeline is great for private equity and people coming after you, but what you actually open is great for your actual profitability. You're not selling yourselves on what's to come. You're selling yourselves on what you have. And so for us, we just want to open healthy units. That's it. Single unit, multi-unit, owner operators, multi-unit investors, or multi-unit operators. We still accept both into our system. We award franchises to both, and we turn down people. If we don't feel like they're a great brand fit, we just say, hey, look, we think you're going to be an excellent franchisee of another system. And we kind of leave it at that. And so on the horizon for us, we'll open several more units this year. The number, I'm not exactly sure, because we got construction delays because of supply chain and equipment and all of those things, just like everyone else. It'll be between 3 and 6 from now until the end of the year. It just depends on permitting and all of those delays that we talked about. But outside of that, we're awarding territories and awarding franchise agreements with good folks. That's what we want to bring into our organization. We want to bring good people into our organization because we don't believe you can run a good restaurant if you're not a good person. And so that's what we're after.
I love that. So this is probably the toughest question of the entire interview.
Okay.
If you had one final meal to eat, what would you eat? Where would you eat? Why would you eat it?
So the mail-in answer, and because I'm not going to be able to pick anything better, outside of the experience that I described in my first story and how I got connected with Shuckin Shack, the very first menu item I ever had with Shuckin Shack was the lobster roll. So if I knew my time was ticking, that's probably what I would go back to. I would go back to the regular lobster roll, French fries, coleslaw, and probably a sweet tea. And that would be my final meal. And I'd be happy going out with lobster in my belly, I think.
I love it, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for taking time out and sharing so much, man. This was absolutely great to get a peek behind the curtain. When I'm up in Carolina Beach again, which will not be too long from now, I will hit you up and we will have to
look me up. Please do.
Share one of those lobster rolls.
Yeah, please do.
All right, man. Have a good one. Cheers.
Yeah, if you love what we served up, please follow us at Vigor Branding on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Medium. Forktales is produced by the team at Vigor. Audio and video post-productions provided by Zencaster. Music performed by Jet Trash and licensed through musicbed.com. Joseph handles his own hair, makeup, and stunts. Copyright 2003 to 2021, Vigor Graphic Design LLC, all rights reserved.